We started the program tonight with the opposite of love. It is not hate. It is indifference. Man's love for man waxes cold. If your love for man waxes cold, that means you step over them in the street. It means you don't see them anymore. We have been so desensitized over the past few decades to the things that actually matter, all the things that we used to value: people, life, thrift, honesty, hard work. We've been told that those things don't matter. You can have it all. Don't worry. It's okay. Nothing's going to change because it's America. Nothing bad could possibly happen to us. So now in the story we just told you about, when the Wyoming House tries to prepare for the worst, they are mocked by the media, who call it a doomsday bill. I ask you to root yourself in common sense. Would your grandparents, who lived through the Great Depression, would they mock Wyoming's attempt to prepare? They wouldn't. And I wouldn't sit by as someone mocked my grandfather. But that's what's happening. We're not strong enough in what our grandparents taught us to stand up. And the elites will mock anyone who prepares or thinks differently than them. They will mock anyone who warns that man's freedom or personal liberty are at risk. Would George Washington mock someone? Would Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, any of them? Would they mock? No. Would they say, it can't happen here? Don't you see the lies we're being told and that we accept because of our indifference? That false sense of security leads people to ignore things, like Soros's attack site Media Matters, where they maliciously target local journalists in an attempt to silence them. Quote, if you hit a reporter, say a beat reporter at a regional newspaper, all of a sudden they'd get 1,000 hostile emails. Sometimes they'd melt down. It had a real effect on reporters who weren't used to that kind of scrutiny. Progressives do not believe in freedom of speech. They don't. They're pounded away from the fairness doctrine to Cass Sunstein, to even the president telling you now which news to listen to. Political correctness is so out of control, we're teaching people to say nothing rather than to say something. We're being taught to be indifferent. We look the other way while an injustice happens. We are being bullied into silence. I want to take Jeremy Lin. Look what happened to him. I am as much of a sports fan as most people are a fan of Woodrow Wilson books. Most people don't care about Woodrow Wilson. I care a lot. I don't care about sports. You might care a lot. My lifetime sports diet consists of the occasional story that transcends ESPN, like a Jerry Maguire movie, and several memories of me being picked last in elementary school or high school, because but I have been drawn into the story of the headline. The online life of the headline on ESPN, on that story in question, was about 45 minutes long. That's how long this thing lasted, 45 minutes. And it was 2:30 in the morning. So 2:30 to 3:15. So no one saw it. Yet because the headline appeared in an article involving an Asian American player, the phrase "chink in the armor" was heard around the world. It would go from an innocuous cliche to the ultimate expression of racial intolerance. America now was faced with two possibilities. One, give somebody, the headline writer, the benefit of the doubt. Consider, perhaps, that the author was not an anti-Asian activist using subtle racial slurs in his headlines of sports stories to underhandedly turn basketball fans towards hatred of those who are different. No. The second object is to freak out. That's our second option. Freak out. Call for the author's head. Everyone in America knows what chink in the armor means. It's been used since the 1500s, used constantly to describe a weakness in an otherwise strong performance. Actual armor. It comes from the knights, the round table kind of stuff. It's properly described what the story was about. The fact that the author didn't notice the theoretically racial tie between the cliche and the NBA star Jeremy Lin is a strong indicator that he wasn't using it in a derogatory way. No matter. The mania eventually climbed to such a level that the ESPN anchor was suspended for what amounts to an accusation of anti-Asian bias. But this guy is married to an Asian. Here is a phrase that has endured centuries of use with no offensive origins at all that we can find. And we have supposed news networks like MSNBC actually blurring out the word when covering the story. Who's about 4 years old? You are. You want to play basketball? Now, Anthony Federico, he is the author of that headline that aired at 3 o'clock in the morning. He was fired. Once the dust settled and the blood was spilled, America barely noticed when we were finally able to meet him. He's a Knicks fan. He loves Jeremy Lin. And he's a man of profound faith. He is a man who's dedicated to charity. He doesn't talk the talk, he walks the walk. The night that he wrote this headline is the same day that he went out to help a friend that he found out was living on the street, was homeless, and was sick. This guy really actually became the Good Samaritan. He actually went out, got him a hotel room, and bandaged him up and fed him. Isn't that what the Good Samaritan did? He has absolutely no reports of any kind of history of racism. He has no blemishes on his work record. He was actually climbing the ladder. In short, there is no evidence whatsoever that any of this happened. No rational human being would believe that he did this on purpose. Are we really supposed to think that a man who gives up his vacation to travel to Haiti and help earthquake victims moonlights as a guy who would risk his career on an anti-Asian pun? Really? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, really? In the aftermath, Federico has been incredibly gracious. He took responsibility for the apparent mistake of not predictively understanding that others would apply racism to his words. He couldn't predict that one. What a dummy, huh? He apologized to his employer for his role in their spineless running of this company, saying, "This had nothing to do with me being cute or punny. I'm so sorry that I offended people. I'm so sorry if I offended Jeremy. I love to tell Jeremy what happened and explain that this was an honest mistake." I think he is acting consistent with his past. He is taking a completely unfair event and using his faith to deal with it, and his inner strength as a way to inspire others to consider a relationship with God. He is using his darkest moments to try and share light with others. This guy's right. This guy's Job, man. And he's alone. No one is standing up for him. No one. All Anthony Federico has received from his employer was this public statement. The ASPN employee responsible for our mobile headline has been dismissed. Oh, Mr. Potter, is that you? Why do I care about a sports headline? Because I don't care about sports. Theme of the show tonight is indifference. How does something like this happen? Well, it's based on a cold bottom-line calculation that probably seems extremely rational in a boardroom. We are a multi-billion-dollar company. The public wants a scalp, investigating the truth, doing our best to discover the intent, soberly explaining the situation to the public, and patiently trying to do the right thing, does nothing for our billion-dollar corporation. There's no upside here, gentlemen. There's no possible benefit to us in doing exactly the right thing for this nameless, faceless, numbered employee. Fire him and move on with our lives, says Mr. Potter. This is jellyfish capitalism. It is business without a spine or a backbone. This is what we're becoming. Pressure groups target companies and their advertisers to create just enough fear to make them ask themselves, who cares about what's right? Why bother fighting it? Where's the upside for us? Wouldn't it be better without him? Yes, America, we have come to this point where freedom of speech only exists when those in pressure groups like it, where we only accept differing opinions from professors, as those professors don't accept any differing opinions from their own students or anyone else, where business owners routinely turn out of control people, they turn the control of their companies over to out of control people, whichever is outside the building screaming the loudest. Why should you care? Why should you not be indifferent? Why should you say to ESPN, you're full of crap? And you know what? Basketball's just not that important to me. Sports is not that important to me. My children's freedom is more important. Being able to have somebody stand up and say, no, this is wrong. This is far bigger than one online writer about basketball. This isn't about any one story, one company, or one industry. Sure, it's easy to sit down and watch a headline writer that you don't know go down in flames and say, who cares? But if you don't speak up for him now, who will be there to speak up for you? More the point, why should anyone stand up to speak up for you? Anthony Federico's job at ESPN was to write headlines. It wasn't to cause an international incident. It wasn't to put the mouse in Orlando at risk. Everybody understands this, including Anthony. A serious private discussion between Anthony and his manager was probably called for, saying, like, Anthony, you're a good guy, and I know you, watch it. Oh my gosh, people really think that? Yes, there's crazy people out there. Let's watch it. Perhaps, if you wanted to start to go down the road of insanity, a probationary period was understandable because the company would have to protect themselves, I guess. Maybe a suspension equal to the air personality who made the exact same mistake would have been justifiable, maybe. But instead, we have a giant corporation, $6.1 billion, ESPN, you know. And they just squash the little guy as the scapegoat, with nothing more than fear and greed as motivators. And America remains silent and indifferent. In fact, the same people who claim to defend the 99%, they're sitting in their parks where they're occupying and they're cheering. Where is the guy saying that doing the right thing is worth the risk? Where is it? Where is the person in power at ESPN standing up and saying, if he goes, I go? Where is Jerry Maguire in this ridiculous sports movie that we're watching? Apparently he doesn't exist. But you better be Jerry Maguire now. You are seeing an injustice. And man's love for man is waxing cold. No one cares. Here is the 1% eating a member of the 99%, and Occupy Wall Street doesn't care. I wanted to share this story with you tonight because this is why we're doing Restoring Love on July 28. People think the opposite of love is hate. It's not. The opposite of love is indifference. If you love this guy, you're not indifferent to this story. We saw indifference during World War II. Germans were indifferent. Poles were indifferent. I started this network because I'm not indifferent. I believe in the truth. I believe that we get it right sometimes and wrong sometimes, but the truth has no agenda. We will never compromise that. We will never back away from it. We'll never be embarrassed to say we got it wrong. But that means in a society like ours is becoming, that means standing up and maintaining that 2 + 2 = 4. No matter who is telling you, no matter how much power they have, no matter what the consequences are, they're telling you it's 2 + 2 = 5. No, it's 4, sir. It's always 4. It means recognizing what is right. And what is right is always worth sticking your neck out for, even if it gets chopped up. In the end, it's right. It means knowing that the most important time to stand up is when it's uncomfortable, or it's with a little guy that can't defend himself. The reward in our society is getting smaller and smaller. In fact, no good deed will go unpunished. It's not an obvious reward, mainly because it's a long-term investment that I personally firmly believe we will all feel in our businesses, in our communities, and in our children long after our time on earth is done.